The automotive industry is one of the biggest employers in the United States. As of 2017, the number of workers car manufacturers employ is just under 1 million. On top of this, there are over 2 million employees that are employed by dealerships across the country, totaling more than 3 million people employed in the automotive industry. These 3 million people show the number of people who directly are affected by automotive industry without looking at employees of the other types of businesses that are affected more indirectly by the automotive industry. We will take a deeper look into those businesses later in this paper. It has been no secret that the car market has had a difficult time in recent years, with many major manufacturers needing help in the form of a government bailout. It does seem since the 2008 bailout that the 3 major U.S. car brands have bounced back, but is the automotive bubble about to burst again? Looking at these signs, they start to point to yes, and this can be disastrous to the U.S. economy. Can this be the start of the 2008 recession all over again? To really see the downward trend that the automotive industry has experienced, you must first look back to 2008 when Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler all asked Congress for the financial help. This is, of course, after the housing and banking markets both crashed, but the three are linked into one another, with the banking crisis of 2007 taking place first, then the housing crash to follow in 2008, followed by the automotive bailout. The reason that the bailout was necessary is people simply weren't buying cars at the same rate they once had. This can be due to many factors, but a main reason was the housing bubble and so many people being in such bad shape with their home mortgages. With all this money being wrapped up in houses they owned, many people's homes were foreclosed on and they could no longer afford these cars. Other factors go into this, such as credit becoming limited, which goes directly back to both the housing and banking crisis. Another factor was the low efficiency of the cars that were being built at the time. Once Congress had agreed on the bailout, the amount to be given had to be decided. Initially, Congress had already committed to giving $25 billion for the programs to build high-efficiency cars. But when the automotive leaders met Congress, they asked for an additional $25 billion to help with the low cash flow and offset the low sales that they were feeling. This deal was denied, and Congress told them that they should return when they have a responsible plan that gives us a realistic chance to get the needed votes. Once they returned, they came back asking for even a larger amount of $34 billion, but the final number they ended up receiving was $24.9 billion, and signed by George W. Bush in December of 2008 using the money from the Troubled Asset Relief Program. In the end, the total amount of money given to Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler during the bailout was $80.7 billion. This bailout ended up costing the taxpayers $10.2 billion, but it all wasn't wasted money with good coming out of the bailout. The bailout ended up adding an additional 341 jobs that had been lost at one point. This was good because at its height, the automotive industry employed over 1 million people in 2006, but had dropped all the way down to 624,000 people by the middle of 2009. The automotive hardships also affected dealerships, as they lost over 300,000 jobs during the same time period. But like the manufacturing plants, gained most of them back with the bailout. What's arguably the most interesting automotive bailout hadn't happened. It's hard to say what's arguably the most interesting thing is that General Motors was the car manufacturer that needed the help the most. Yet even the bailout, they still had to cut jobs along with production. Luckily for the U.S. economy, foreign car makers such as Toyota and Honda were able to add employees and increase U.S. factors. Therefore, the question must be asked, was the 2000 bailout that lasted until 2014 worth the amount of money that was spent? Many leading experts don't really think so. Many believe that the businesses such as Ford, Toyota, and Honda could have held out the market and it would have stayed relatively the same once it bounced back, with each just having larger shares of the automotive industry market. I, on the other hand, find it important for the government to help large businesses such as General Motors and Chrysler. This being for the fact that it is important for American companies to be seen and to make sure that we don't depend on foreign businesses that the U.S. has little control over. If something was to happen to Toyota or Honda and they had to start downsizing this, there could be less that the U.S. could do to help like they did during the bailout. If these companies had to start downsizing, it is hard to say what effect it would have on the U.S. economy. That's why I believe that it is important for the U.S. to try and help big businesses when it is both legal and right for the sake of the people of America. The reason that the automotive industry hardship is important is because of the number of jobs that it supplies to so many different types of fields. The first is that it employs so many different jobs. Again, the automotive industry and sales of cars makes up nearly 3 million jobs as of 2017. Losing these jobs, or even a low percentage of them, can do terrible things to the U.S. economy. This was shown during the late 2000s when the financial crisis happened. If the automotive bailout hadn't happened, it is hard to say what would have happened to the U.S. and worldwide economy. What is easy to look at is the number of jobs and money that were lost during the time connected to the automotive industry. However, what you must look at is the people and businesses that are directly affected by the automotive industry, but not part of the automotive industry themselves. The first is the oil business. In the U.S. alone, 70% of oil production is used by cars in one way or another, whether they are driven, gas to drive them, or used in the manufacturing and transportation of the cars themselves. If the American citizens start to buy less cars, they will then use less oil, and like a domino effect, the oil industry will start to fail with thousands more jobs being lost. The oil industry alone employs anywhere from 140 to 200,000 employees depending on the time of the year. Losing these jobs is not really an option, as the oil industry is a huge part of the U.S. economy. Another effect is the local and regional mechanical and auto body businesses that are Another effect is the local and regional mechanical and auto body businesses. These are the businesses that help small communities with jobs and tax revenue. As of 2017, there is estimated to be around 229,000 such businesses around the country. These are other types of businesses that can be affected with a downturn in the automotive industry. In addition to the oil industry being affected, the gas stations will now suffer. This would hurt many different types of places. It will hurt small communities, but it will also hurt nationally and globally as well. Large corporations such as Shell, Marathon, and other oil companies will be affected since people aren't buying as much gas. There won't be as big of a need as gas. There will be more jobs, and there will be more jobs lost, and it will be an all-around affect the U.S. economy. There are many other parties that are also impacted by the automotive industry hardships than just the automotive industry themselves. That's why the automotive industry is so important. The automotive industry can be in trouble again, but for a much different reason this time. This being that younger people aren't buying cars at the rate their parents did. This is for a wide variety of reasons, but one of them is ride sharing and a lesser demand and need for cars. With services like Lyft and Uber and others, you can now get rides directly at your door without having to get in a taxi. This can be beneficial in many ways because if they are able to get with such ease around by using apps, they don't feel the need for cars, which can save them money in the long run. This is something that many people like also is because it is all done on your phone, so less interaction is needed. From 2007 to 2011, people the age from 18 to 34 bought 30% fewer cars. That is a staggering number, especially if it holds up for not only the same people as they grow in age, but also for people who come into that age demographic. This is one of the biggest problems, and if people do buy cars, they are willing to share them, which is also while they are not in use. This is another app such as Turo, which lets people rent someone's personal cars. This will also cut down on people's need to try to buy a car, since when you do need one, it is easier to rent one than before at a much lower rate. This is the problem that is currently facing the automotive industry, and is one that they must figure out to make sure that it does not only revert back to make sure that it does not revert to 2008 and the bailout or something much worse happens again. In the end, there was not one factor that caused the automotive. There was not one factor that caused the automotive industry crisis, but instead many different factors, such as the housing and banking crisis and others that led to the 2008 bailout. The automotive industry is an important sector to make sure that the U.S. keeps around for one, the number of jobs it supplies directly, and then the number of jobs that it supplies indirectly. Therefore, the automotive industry hardships are something that needs to be closely monitored, and there must be action taken before it's too late for something to be done.